Good morning again. How good it is to see all your smiley, shining faces this morning. Hi, Amber. So this year we are working with the theme here at Centers for Spiritual Living. We're working with the theme of spirituality in action. And the way we're developing that theme and deepening into our understanding of that theme this month is we are focusing on the theme of advocating for freedom of thought. And the spiritual value that we're working with this month is creativity. And today we are focused on moving beyond our story. Who likes stories? Yeah, well, I'm not going to tell you one. Oh, you never know, I might. So what is the value of a story? What is the value of our stories, or a story, or any story? The value, we have great values in our stories in that they can teach us things, right? They can open our minds, they can expand our consciousness, they can inspire us, they can motivate us, they can make us feel, right? If we're open to receiving the message of the story, they can entertain us. They do all these wonderful things for us in that they open our eyes, perhaps, if we're willing to receive them in greater ways. When we think of teaching stories, we can think of the parables, right? And that the parables are not necessarily stories of value, but they are stories of consciousness. And we have the Good Samaritan story as one such story, where we hear of a man who has been beaten and downtrodden, and people keep passing him by. The priests pass him by, and they walk on the other side of the street, making judgments and assumptions, and they refuse to step in and assist the man, right? And then you've got scribes passing by, all these people who are supposed to be principled, passing this man by, and then you have the Samaritan who comes along the side of the road and recognizes this man in need and helps him, tends to his wounds, and then helps provide him shelter by taking him to an inn and then paying for his room and board, and then checks back up on him. Now, it's interesting that it's called the Good Samaritan because what is it? We think perhaps in this day and age that the Good Samaritan, because he did good deeds, that's why he's called the Good Samaritan. And it is true that he did do good deeds, right? But back in those times, Samaritans were the other. They were the people that were not as good. They were the people who were seen as not being whole and holy. They were the people seen as being someone outside of the faith tradition, outside of the norm, outside of the status quo. They were seen as less than. So who are the Samaritans in our society today? Immigrants, LGBTQ, women, the other, right? Atheists. To a lot of people, we are. Right, we're not a necessarily majority faith, right? People of color. These are all seen perhaps as the Samaritans. And then when we see one of these people in population do a good deed or do a good work, there's like, oh, they're the exception to the rule. They're the good one. As opposed to not, right? So keep that in mind, that when they're talking about the Good Samaritan, or when we discuss the Good Samaritan, that it's almost shining a light on this person is an example or exemplary of their group. They're not exemplary, they're the exception to the group. to the known idea. Because what the parables, the way the master teacher used the parables, is they were parables, they were stories of shock value. They were shocking. That's what made them like, hey, listen, right? Pay attention to what I'm saying. Pay attention to the story. There was a shock value to it. And so that was part of the shock value to it. Because they asked, who is my neighbor, right? The Pharisees were asking, who is my neighbor? And he responded with the parable of the Good Samaritan. So this is an example of a teaching story. It's an example of how we can lift up and raise up and learn from story and be inspired by story and be motivated by story to walk in the world with greater integrity, to walk in the world with oneness, to walk in the world as the presence of love. And that it is not the great exception, but it is an example for all of us to follow. The Good Samaritan was not the exception. He was the moral high ground. When they go low, we go high. He was the moral high ground. He was showing what it is to be love in action, what it is to be spirituality in action, what it is to be the power and the presence of love, showing up and being the neighbor. Yes? So I'm going to tell you a story. I just told you one. Stories can motivate, stories can inspire, stories can also hold us back. When we get caught in our own story, when we get caught in our own drama, when we get caught in our own belief system, sorry. A little phlegmy this morning, I don't know why, but there we are. When we get caught in our own belief system, we ride the drama triangle. Ooh, and we ride that drama triangle hard, like we are strapped to the back of a bucking bronco wanting to go back to the barn. We ride that drama triangle hard. Right? And because drama, when we have a story, there's always drama. Right? There's drama. And what creates the drama is tension between characters. And guess what? We're always the protagonist of our own story. We're the protagonist of our own story. But guess what? So is Mike, he's the protagonist, and so is Tori Samuel, and so is Janet. Everybody's the protagonist. Well, that means there's a heck of a lot of stories with a heck of a lot of heroes or victims or villains, right? Because a story tends to have those three main characters. There has to be conflict. There has to be the hero, there has to be the victim, and there has to be the villain. And when I think of those three things, I always think of like the silent movies with the damsel in distress who's like tied to the train track, and then you've got the villain with the long goatee and the big top hat and then you've got the guy coming in all dressed in white to save her and vanquish her, right? So the classic story, right? But what role are you assigning yourself when you're the protagonist? And the roles that we tend to assign ourselves kind of get instilled early on when we are developing agency, as we talked about in the morning table this morning. They kind of get developed early on as we develop agency. And we're trying to navigate our roles in our families, and we're trying to navigate our roles in society. That they get instilled early on. So is it, okay, so I'm going to navigate this world. So how am I going to show up and how am I going to be in order to either maintain safety or get what I want? I know. If I play the victim, oh, woe is me, please take care of me, right? Then, I can use that way of manipulating the situation so that everybody feels sorry for me, so that then I get showered with love and I get showered with attention because people are taking care of me, right? Or maybe it's the villain, like, fine, I'll just bully I want it, guess what? I demand it. You give it to me, or I am going to cause all kinds of havoc in your life. I'm going to either physically intimidate you, manipulate, intimidate, or verbally intimidate you, or any other way, psychologically manipulate you, right? I'm going to bully to get my way, right? That's another way of doing it, yes? And then there's the hero, too, right? It's like, oh, I see this happening, so let me swoop in and save the day, right? Because by swooping in and saving the day, then I have the opportunity to be acknowledged and be loved and be valued because I'm the hero. And heaven forbid you don't need my assistance anymore, because then once you don't need my assistance anymore, then I become the villain because now I'm going to make sure that you need my assistance. Right? Oh, yeah. It's called codependence. Right? And so this triangle, that we have this tendency to ride the triangle, and we are always somebody's villain. Right? We are always the victim, and we are always the hero. Sometimes we're all three at once, and sometimes we move along the triangle. So one of the ways that we move beyond our story that we just lost signal to, but one of the ways that we move beyond our story is to recognize where we're riding the triangle. At what point we are on the triangle. Where are we in our own story? Who have we cast ourselves to be? Where have we placed our role? How are we seeing ourselves, and where have we placed our role? But not only are you the protagonist of your own story, you're also the author of your own story. Breathe that in. Oh, bummer, right? You mean I'm the author of this mess? Yes, yes, yes. And collectively, we're the authors of mess, right? So we have the opportunity then to disrupt it, to interrupt it, because what do we know here? That we change our lives by the way we change our thoughts, the way we change our thinking. When we bring ourselves back to principle, when we take 100% responsibility of our own lives, 100% responsibility of our thoughts, 100% responsibility of our beliefs, then things begin to shift because we are lifting ourselves out of that victim consciousness. When we begin to take responsibility, like we talked about last week, when we realize that we are always at choice, that I can choose what I believe, I can choose what I think, I can choose what I say, what I do, what I speak. When we choose that from a place of consciousness by having awoken to, hey, you know what? I'm riding this victim role really hard right now. What would it feel like to change that? Or I'm writing this hero thing really hard, or I'm writing this villain thing really hard. What would it look like if I shifted my perspective? What would it look like if I took 100% responsibility? You know what it looks like when you take 100% responsibility? It looks like you're now the creator. It looks like you're now taking creative thought and creative action for your life. So getting out of the drama triangle, like the Bermuda Triangle, it's just going to suck you in, right? To get out of the drama triangle, to move from victim, we have to take 100% responsibility for our lives. It doesn't mean that you're taking 100% responsibility for all the terrible things that may or may not have happened to you. But you are taking responsibility for how you think about it and how you reframe it, how you reinterpret it, how you reinvent yourself. That you are no longer allowing the situation or the experience to be the driving force in your life, because that's something external. And where is the power? Where do we know the power is? It's right here, always internal, right? It's not some external power, it's always inside. So when we take 100% responsibility, now we've gone from being the victim to the creator. We realize that we have responsibility, so we realize that we have agency. We realize that we create our lives. And when we realize that we create our lives, when we realize that we are creating together, that we are co-creating with and as the one, because we've recognized who we are, what happens when we give up our story? We become free. What happens when we take responsibility for our lives? We become free. And so that victim becomes the creator, and it becomes creative energy. And we're able to create something new. We're able to change the way we look at things. We're able to change our thoughts, belief patterns, etc. Because we've taken responsibility for ourselves first. And then the villain in this raised model in consciousness, when we're practicing the presence, in this raised model, then the villain actually becomes the challenger. And so then the challenger then says, hey, I see you're creating here, and have you considered this perspective? Have you seen this angle? What would it look like if you did this? The challenger comes at it from a place of curiosity and of offering a challenge, and offering an opportunity for innovation. This is one of the things where perhaps capitalism does work in that it drives innovation, right? If Apple comes out with a new product, then Android is like, they have a new product. We need to do something too. We need to create a better camera. Okay, so now we have a better camera, so that can compete with what they've got over there. And then Apple goes, they have a better camera, so we need to do this, right? And so it's driving the innovation. It's driving the creativity because it's a constant challenge. But it's not coming from a place of trying to victimize or trying to be a villain. And then the hero aspect of it, the hero aspect of it then becomes what's called the coach. Not a stage coach, right? But a coach. And the coach recognizes that, everyone is a divine being. Everyone is the power and the presence of love. This is true of everyone, and what I know is that everyone has the ability to step forward. Everybody has the ability to change their life. And then you become the coach and saying, hey, here's another way. Let me show you, right? Let me come alongside you and guide you on this part of your path, or even just walk with you, just accompany you as you're figuring out how to take 100% responsibility. Not even necessarily guiding, but being a companion to walk beside you. And so it's not about rescuing, it's about coaching. It's about showing the way. It's about being the witness to that which is unfolding. And so you're no longer riding this drama triangle, now you're riding this presence triangle. And where that comes from is that comes from a place of intention. And it comes from a place of your own being, your own sense of security, your own willingness to do the work to get yourself there. And we fall below that line and we ride that triangle sometimes, but once you realize that you're riding the triangle, guess what? You can interrupt it. Yes? So the minute you know that you can interrupt it, then you have the ability to change your thought. You have the ability to change your feelings. You have the ability to change what it is that you wish to experience in your life, because what's currently working or what's currently happening isn't necessarily working. So it's moving beyond our story, hopping off the drama triangle, taking 100% responsibility for ourselves, and then recognizing and doing the work, and then, like I said last week, turning around and helping the next person along from a healthy perspective, from a healthy way, rather than a codependent way. We all have stories. And last week I asked you, what is keeping you from moving from your old country, if you will, into your promised land? It's your story. It's the attachment to the story. It's the attachment to the false belief. And when we are willing to let go of the story, when we're willing to reframe it, when we're willing to flip the script, when we're willing to say, plot twist, that's when things change. That's when things begin to change. And how do I know this? Because I've done it. And I continue to do it. And it continues to be daily work. To continue to remember to stop riding the triangle and to lift higher, to raise higher, to live higher, to elevate my own consciousness. Growing up gay during the time frame that I did, it was very scary to come out. Even though I had a loving family, it was still a very scary time to be out. And when my biological father finally confronted me about it by asking, I think I've shared with you, are you living a homosexual lifestyle? Right. Vegan is a lifestyle, homosexuality not, but okay. I said, do you mean I'm gay, right? And then he took the position of love the sinner, hate the sin. And what he did in that moment was bring the full weight and bear of conservative Christianity down on me and focused it right at me, saying that I was inherently wrong, that I was inherently evil, that I would still love you, but I cannot love the sin. And as long as you're sinning, we have to minimize the relationship. Right? And so what I then created in my own story was that all of Christianity was against me. That all Christian people were just like my father. Even though I knew my grandparents weren't, they were my own little good Samaritans, right? But all of Christianity then became that. I lumped it in. And they were all wrong. The Bible, oh my God, a book of oppression. The word God, even worse. And let's not even talk about JC, okay? And it all was there. And it stayed there for a really long time. And I found my way through New Age spirituality, crystals and tarot cards and pyramids and all this. I found my way through that. And then I found myself kind of falling into neo-paganism and goddess traditions. And then I evolved into not even evolved, but moved into looking at Unitarian Universalism because that was really pretty wide open and they just were so accepting of whatever. And then I kind of went back to the goddess thing that never really left me. The earth traditions never really left. And then I found Centers for Spiritual Living. Awesome. Because there's this spirituality here, and yet I can believe what I need to believe and believe what I want to believe, and I don't have to call it God. I can call it the universe, and nobody minds. Right? And then I heard the call of Spirit on my life. I heard the call to become a practitioner, and then just a few months later, I heard the call to ministry. And as I was working through this, and I was standing right there at the edge of entering ministerial school, guess what my first classes were in ministerial school? Bible. Not only Bible, but Old Testament Bible. The part that's used to, make me feel shame and blame for who I am and who I love. Right? The part that's been weaponized against my people. I was like, oh, crap. I got to get over this now. I'm stepping into this role. People are going to see me in this role. People are going to assume I'm Christian and when I'm out in the world. And I need to make peace with my own self. I need to make peace with what it means to be Christian. I need to make peace with Jesus the Christ. I need to make peace with the Bible. I need to make peace with all of it. And then my second class, the New Testament. And then the class after that, understanding the Bible. And then the class after that was Gnosticism. So for that first year, was like, okay, you're going to have to get over this really quickly. And here's Spirit showing up, or here's the universe showing up as, here it is, right? So when I told my mom a few years ago that I was teaching Bible school, or that I was teaching a Bible class, she about fell out, right? Like, wait a minute. You're teaching what? Bible? Right? Yeah. Because I healed that within myself. I got a different perspective. I started seeing it. Other people were able to show me another way that the Bible could be used, or another way that it could be interpreted, another idea of Christianity, another idea of who Jesus the Christ was. And so it was a broader perspective. And so on Friday night, we went to Lights for Liberty in San Bernardino. And I wore my collar. Now, typically in Centers for Spiritual Living, we don't wear collars, right? But I wore my collar. And what ensued on Facebook was very interesting amongst my own colleagues about the collar. And what ensued there was also interesting in wearing the collar. You saw it at my installation, and I've worn it a couple different times. When I'm out and about in the world and I really feel that there needs to be a clergy presence bringing attention to something, then I wear the collar. Because a simple stole doesn't stand out the way a collar does. All of you, when you see somebody in a black shirt and a white collar, what do you think? A priest, right? Or minister, or whatever. It's really simple, right? It's very identifiable. So that evening, I had so many people on the shady side of the street. I had, thank you, sweet organizers, on the shady side of the street, nod, acknowledge me, approach me, say thank you for being here. I appreciate seeing clergy. Your presence is a comfort to me. And others would then engage and go, so what denomination are you from? And I would say, I'm from Riverside Center for Spiritual Living. What is that? I've never heard of that. And then it was an opportunity to open up and share and engage in dialogue with these beloveds who had no idea where we were or who we are. There's a wonderful Mennonite woman who approached me, and she says, well, I used to go to the Mennonite congregation in Upland, but I live in Beaumont, and the Mennonite congregation is kind of dwindling, and I'm looking for a spiritual home. I said, have you checked out CSL Beaumont yet? And she goes, no, not yet, but after speaking with you, I certainly will. And so it's not about proselytizing, but it's about being available and being visible, right? And stepping into it. Never did I think that I would be wearing a black shirt and a collar. Never. My sister can attest to this. She never thought it either, right? And so it's about being present, and it's about being available for the shady side of the street. And it was also being available for the sunny side of the street. And so, how do I know that getting out of your story works? And how do I know that you can be free? It's because when they recognized the collar and they started yelling, hey, pastor, shame on you. Hey, pastor, hypocrite. I stepped down to the front of the curb and just let it come. And when they said, hey, pastor, how many children have you molested? I stood, being the power and the presence of love. Not only for the people standing here, not only for the children and the families who have been separated, not only for the detainees, but for myself. Because I was right here. The power and the presence was right here. Hurl all you want. Forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Forgive them, for they have forgotten who they are. And it starts here within each one of us. It starts with a willingness to recognize that we are willing to get off the drama triangle. It starts with the willingness to say, hey, you know what? I think there is something better here. I think there's another way that I could live. I think there's another way that I could express in the world. It starts right here, but it starts with a willingness to step up into our own lives, a willingness to take responsibility for ourselves, and then a willingness to love and be loved. Clean and clear and easy with one another. So this day, I invite you to move out of your story. It's holding you back. What would you be without your story? You'd be free. You'd be free to live your highest potential. So what is it that we affirm here? Let's do our focus statement. We embolden people to live their highest potential through the transformative power of love. That is my charge to you this day. Be free. And so it is. So I invite our practitioners to please stand and surround the sanctuary. I invite our core council members to also do the same. So these beloveds are in prayer for this community daily. We receive your prayer requests either by you filling out a prayer request form that's in the back of your pews and dropping that in the prayer request box outside. We also receive it via our website. We also receive your prayer requests via Facebook. So make sure that if you do have a prayer request that you are reaching out and allowing this group of beloveds to lift you high in love and high in prayer. And I invite you, if you are so moved, to come forward after service and receive prayer from either Tim or Kim. They'd be delighted to pray with you this day. So let's come together in consciousness, shall we? What I recognize that there's only one power, one presence, one life, one love, one infinite eternal beingness. It is the allness, it is the isness, it is the fullness of life, it is the fullness of creation. From itself, through itself, as itself, all of creation was brought forth. All of life was brought forth. There is nothing that was created that is not of God and as God and is God. So I know that there is only this one life, therefore I know that that is the truth of who I am. I live, move, breathe, and have my being in it, that right where I am, the power and the presence of love is, because I am one with it. And it moves through me and as me out into the world. I am the vessel through which it operates. And as I know that this is true of me, I know that this is true of everyone present and everyone who ever hears this word. That all life is sacred. All life is whole and holy. Each one of us is the divine made manifest. Each one of us is the divine expressing. And so I speak my word here and now for this congregation, recognizing that we move beyond our stories. We move beyond that which was, that which has been, letting go of that which has been, that which was, recognizing that principle is not bound by precedent. That at every moment life is working for us, not against us. That every moment we are at choice. Every moment we are free to choose to flip the script. We are free to reinvent ourselves. We are free to reinterpret our story. We are free to create a new world, a new life, a new beginning. For our life always starts here and now in the ever-present moment. It's a blank slate that is before me. It is a blank page that is before me, and what I choose to write on it is my choice. I can choose to continue the old story, or I can begin writing a new one. And so in this moment, I choose to begin writing something new. I choose to plant into consciousness. I choose to plant that seed of love, that seed of purpose, that seed of poise. I choose to plant the seed of peace, the seed of joy, the seed of balance, the seed of harmony, the seed of a world that works for everyone in all of creation. I choose to plant that seed that everyone awakens to the idea that they are already emboldened to live their highest potential. That the transformative power of love is right where they are. I plant this seed now, watching it grow and flourish and bloom and bear fruit. And I drink of it richly. And so I simply give thanks for the unfoldment. I give thanks for the unfoldment of this word. I give thanks for the unfoldment of this congregation. I give thanks for the rise in consciousness that has already occurred here and that continues to occur and continues to unfold. For truly, we are the ones we've been waiting for. All the power is right where we are. I simply give thanks for it, and I release this word into the law, knowing it is done, knowing it is so, and together we affirm, and so it is.